Minister Barbara Creecy is delivering the keynote address there. Let's go live to that event.
And this is obviously a very important opportunity for people who might otherwise not be able to afford to make this special visit. You know, Premier, this morning ENCA asked me, but how do we get there? It's 1,000 kilometers away. I said to ENCA, not everybody lives in Johannesburg. Some people do live in the Northern Cape, and those are the people that will be coming during from Monday to Friday next week to see the Augrabies Falls. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to acknowledge First National Bank and also Total Energies for the incredible contribution that they make to this project, but also to all of the work that we do in our national parks. We have I was telling Premier that we have a fleet of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. Without those facilities, we would not be able to patrol our national parks, we would not be able to manage fire, we would not be able to combat wildlife crime. And that wonderful fleet is supplied with fuel by Total Energies. So I think, can you give a round of applause to our sponsors, First National Bank, who always help us. They always come and say, how do we help you? And Total Energies. Now, in our country, conservation and biodiversity and the way in which we manage it has always been characterized by the principle of sustainable use. And in our national parks, as you have heard from the chairperson of the board and also the Premier, tourism is the central pillar. And I would also want to add my voice and say that we are indeed excited that last year our tourism recovered significantly and we were able to welcome almost 3.5 million visitors to our national parks. And this is an increase from just 1.9 million visitors during the COVID pandemic. And obviously this is a very important...
Let's go back now to the Minister on the Sand Parks Week.
The city sector remains substantially untransformed, and there is inequality in access to benefits arising from biodiversity and its associated ecosystems. Furthermore, the sector has not yet reached its full potential in terms of its contribution to the gross domestic product. And it is important because we know in these rural areas there are limited forms of economic activity. It is very important that we use the biodiversity economy as a catalytic engine for growth and development in rural areas. The panel also noted that in our efforts to build the biodiversity sector and to encourage tourism, we do have certain unsustainable practices that are bringing our sector into disrepute internationally and are damaging our role as an ecotourism destination. Now, the recommendations of the panel provided a very clear way forward on how to address key sector challenges and highlight the importance of transformation in the sector with empowerment and capacitation of communities living with wildlife and recognition of their traditions and customs as practiced through traditional leaders and traditional healers. The panel also recommended the need for a more holistic approach to sustainable use, which ensures responsible and humane use of South Africa's biodiversity and ends harmful practices such as those associated with the captive lion industry. Arising from this high-level panel report and its recommendations, we have put together a draft paper on sustainable use, and SANParks and its sister organization SANBI were very central to the drafting of this paper. The white paper focuses on transformation with access and beneficiation by communities adjacent to protected areas, as well as disadvantaged individuals being central to the objectives of the white paper. And it laid out a vision of a nation living in harmony with nature. So in doing this, we must provide transformative socio-economic development benefits to the nation through justifiable, responsible, and ecologically sustainable activities. In setting out the principles to guide future policy and legislation, we, as I've already said, established the principle of sustainable use, and we said that we must ensure the persistence of species, the ecological integrity of our ecosystems. We must emphasize our social responsibilities, and also we must highlight the welfare of animals. An important companion strategy that has been released together with the draft white paper on sustainable use is the game meat strategy. This strategy acknowledges the significant contribution made by the current wildlife businesses and the various associations that drive critical elements of the value chain. Key to taking forward the new strategy will be to harness the experience of existing businesses and their expertise. New private sector investments will be needed, and partnerships and collaborations will be essential if we are to establish meaningful buy-in from all of our stakeholders. In our view, properly implemented, the game meat strategy will allow for compatible land use on the outskirts of our national parks and ensure that surrounding communities have a sustainable offtake. Given the high level of public interest in both these strategies, we have extended the period for public consultation until the 26th of September. Now, among the robust regulations and strategies already in place to ensure ecological sustainability and ecosystem protection in our country, we have the National Protected Areas Expansion Strategy, which guides the expansion of our country's conservation estate. During the past year, 9,500 hectares of conservation land has been added to 4 of our national parks, namely Addo Elephant, Namakwa, Table Mountain, and Agulhas National Parks. During this current year, we will add a further 4,000 hectares to the system of national parks. Now, as part of the holistic approach to halting biodiversity loss, the National Protected Areas Expansion Strategy was approved by Cabinet in 2020. This strategy is informed by systematic conservation planning with the aim of increasing our conservation estate by 0.5% per annum with a 20-year target, so that by 2036 we aim to have 28% of the country's surface area under conservation. The ultimate target is 36% of our total terrestrial and marine areas, which will be representative of all biomes. Ladies and gentlemen, this year in Montreal, Canada, the world will adopt the Global Biodiversity Framework at the 15th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity and Conservation. This post-2020 agenda for biodiversity identifies transformative changes to achieve the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. Our country supports and welcomes all targets in the Global Biodiversity Framework and recognizes the need for ambitious targets, including Target 3, which is commonly known as the 30 by 30 30% of the land, 30% of the sea under conservation by 2030. South Africa emphasizes that our country's contribution to Target 3 must be subject to our national circumstances, the affordability of expanding our national parks and the sustainability of doing this, as well as safeguarding the rights across the globe of indigenous people and local communities. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, it is appropriate that I encourage all South Africans to take pride in protecting our country's rich biodiversity. And I once again invite you all to visit our national parks so that you can see for ourselves what a wonderful country we live in. I thank you.
All right, so we're coming out, of course, of that South African National Sandparks Week.